Imagine waking up on a normal day and entering the kitchen as usual to prepare your breakfast. Everything seems peaceful. The smell of coffee permeates the space, and sunlight gently filters through the window. But suddenly, your eyes fall on a strange object in the middle of the kitchen floor. You freeze in place. A face. Yes, a distinct human face, with eyes, a nose, and a mouth drawn as if silently watching you. Your heart is pounding. Your first thought is to call your little brother. He comes running and stands beside you. You look at him and ask, "Did you draw that face?" He shakes his head in confusion and replies, "No, I didn't do anything." But your mind refuses to believe it. You think he's lying, or maybe he's just joking. You grab the cleaning sponge and start scrubbing the area vigorously. The more you scrub, the more your heart grows frightened because the face doesn't disappear. It's as if it's engraved in the concrete itself, fixed and unmoving, as if it wants to stay there forever. This scene wasn't a fantasy. It was the beginning of one of the strangest true stories that has baffled Spain and the world. It actually happened to a family named Perea in the small village of Belmez in 1971. Maria Perea, a housewife, was the first to notice the face while preparing food. Unbelievably, she called her husband and children over to examine the scene. Everyone stood in amazement. The features were eerily precise, and the eyes seemed to follow anyone who approached. The news spread quickly among the villagers. Suddenly, the house was filled with curious neighbors, whispering and exchanging confused glances. Some said it was just a trick or a coincidence in the shape of the cement, while others whispered that it was perhaps a curse or a sign from another world. Maria, deeply worried, tried every possible way to remove the face. Repeated cleaning, pouring hot water, and even digging up and replacing the floor. But the next day, the face reappeared, more clearly than before, as if smiling mockingly at everyone who had tried to obliterate it. From here, the story began to transform from mere curiosity into a true mystery, turning the Perea family home into a destination for anyone wanting to witness the phenomenon for themselves. Authorities intervened. The press began writing about the faces of Belmez, and the kitchen became the most famous haunted kitchen in Spain. The Pereira family couldn't accept the idea of an unknown face staring at them every day in their kitchen. Its presence was disturbing and frightening, especially as people began to pay more attention to the house. The head of the family decided to take decisive action. One day, he summoned construction workers to the house and asked them to remove the entire floor and replace it with a new cement floor. Everyone watched the process silently. When the workers finished, everyone felt relieved. Finally, the nightmare was over. But the family's peace of mind was short-lived. Just a few days later, a new face appeared on the same floor, more distinct than before, as if challenging them. This time, it wasn't just one person's face. Different features began to take shape in more than one place, some strange and distorted, as if they were screaming or crying. The story became a real scandal in the village. Neighbors began coming daily to observe the mysterious faces, some whispering that the house was cursed, while others insisted that what was happening was nothing more than a ploy by the family to attract attention. But curiosity wasn't limited to the neighbors. Neighboring villages began sending visitors, and Pereira's house became an almost daily gathering point. Maria, who used to feel terrified whenever she entered the kitchen, began hearing strange noises at night, as if someone was whispering underground. Some nights she would feel slow footsteps passing through the hallways, but when she went out to check, she found no one. The family's fear grew so intense that they considered leaving the house, but they didn't have enough money to buy another one. In a last-ditch effort, they summoned religious leaders to pray at the site. Strangely, on the same night the religious leaders left, a new face appeared, this time on the wall next to the fireplace, even more terrifying than the previous one. Its eyes were wide open, its mouth open, as if it were screaming silently. The scene was so nightmarish that one of the neighbors fainted upon seeing it. The house became a living mystery, and the villagers began whispering that these faces belonged to the spirits of people who had been killed there long ago, and that what was happening was not the work of humans, but rather a call from another world, a call that wanted to tell a story that had not yet been told. What was happening in the Perea household was no longer a family affair. After the uproar caused by the appearance of the faces, local authorities intervened. Police officers arrived at the house early one morning, accompanied by municipal officials, and began documenting everything. Press cameras were in every corner, and curious onlookers gathered outside to witness what was happening. The mayor ordered the entire kitchen floor to be demolished this time, not just replaced. The goal was to put an end to the controversy once and for all, and for all, and for all, and to ensure that what was happening was not a hoax or a scam. Everyone sat outside, silently watching the excavation, the atmosphere tense. As one of the workers lifted the last layer of old cement, he suddenly screamed, and everyone gathered around the hole. What emerged was a nightmare. Ancient human bones, some still intact, but with their heads completely missing. The smell of decay pervaded the area, and some of those present covered their faces in shock. Forensic experts were quickly summoned, and the entire house was sealed off, transformed into an old crime scene. The bodies were taken to laboratories for analysis, while the debate grew more heated. Was what had appeared on the floor a mere coincidence, or were those faces linked to the spirits of the victims? Days later, the results were released. The bones belonged to men and women who had died decades earlier, perhaps in the 19th century. However, the exact cause of their deaths was unknown, and the absence of skulls further complicated the investigation. Authorities enlisted the help of psychologists and paranormal experts to examine the house. They brought in audio recording devices and thermal imaging cameras and spent entire nights inside. However, as night fell, the devices began recording strange sounds, such as muffled moans or slow footsteps on the newly renovated flooring. One night, the cameras captured blurry images of human faces appearing on the wall and then suddenly disappearing. The press began calling the House of Screaming Spirits, and the small village became a magnet for tourists and paranormal seekers. But for the Perea family, the house has become a curse, their lives a living hell, trapped between press cameras, the ravages of curious onlookers, and the constant fear of what might happen the next day. After weeks of excavation, investigations, and resurfacing, everyone thought the mystery was over. The family returned home, hoping life would return to normal. But the calm didn't last long. One night, as the mother was preparing dinner, she noticed something strange out of the corner of her eye on the newly renovated kitchen floor. Slowly, she approached, and her blood froze. A new face had appeared, one that hadn't been there the day before. Within a few days, the floor was once again filled with strange faces, some resembling the first ones, others completely new. What made it even more terrifying was that the faces were no longer static. They slowly changed their expressions, as if trying to express something. Some visitors swore they saw one of the faces open its mouth, as if screaming, while others said the eyes followed them wherever they moved in the kitchen. Press reports began to speak of the living faces of Belmez. The news spread beyond the village, and researchers from the universities of Madrid and Seville arrived to investigate the phenomenon. They installed advanced cameras, highly sensitive microphones, and even sensors to measure any changes in temperature or electromagnetic fields within the room. But the results were contradictory. One team of researchers declared the phenomenon a hoax, claiming that the faces were drawn using chemicals that react with the cement. Another team, however, asserted that their analyses showed that the figures bore no trace of coloring agents and were an integral part of the floor structure, as if they had formed naturally. While the scientists debated, the phenomenon continued to escalate. One evening, one of the researchers entered the kitchen alone to take additional measurements and heard faint whispers, as if emerging from underground. Looking down, he saw a new face slowly taking shape on the tiles, staring back at him with sunken eyes. The researcher ran out and returned the next day, determined to prove what he had seen. However, none of the cameras installed in the room recorded the moment. The kitchen became a terrifying place that family members dared not enter after sunset. Even in broad daylight, a sense of heaviness and fear pervaded the place, as if something was watching them from beneath the floor. With each new face that appeared, the family grew more certain that what inhabited this house was not just memories of the past, but something alive, still stuck there, trying to communicate or seek revenge. They heard voices and whispers and placed voice recorders to understand what was being said in the voices. They recorded the voices and put them on loudspeakers to understand what was being said in those voices. In those voices, they heard words that froze their blood in their veins.
Hell begins here now. She is buried until now. Belmez, I want to go. Here, all of us are here. Here, dead people are here. Oh, moo. Here we laugh.
Years passed, and the Belmez house transformed from a source of terror for the family into a tourist attraction, visited by people from all over Spain and even from other countries. The kitchen was no longer just an ordinary room. It became, as the locals called it, the stage of the phenomenon. Visitors would enter cautiously, some taking photos, others simply standing silently, as if witnessing a mysterious ritual. Over time, the place became like a living horror museum. Plexiglass barriers were installed to protect the floor, but this didn't prevent the faces from reappearing, sometimes in new, untouched places. What most chilled visitors was the appearance of faces welcoming some and irritated others. Some visitors swore they felt a sudden warmth on their feet, while others swore they heard faint whispers or heavy breathing coming from beneath the floor. Scientists continued to study the phenomenon, but every attempt to arrive at a definitive explanation ended in a dead end. Some suggested the phenomenon might be the result of rare geological and chemical conditions that cause the colors to form on the surface over time. Others have gone further, asserting that what happens at Belmez is evidence of the existence of afterlife energy, or a spiritual imprint left by victims killed there decades, perhaps centuries ago. Today, the Belmez house has become a part of Spanish popular culture, inspiring documentaries, horror films, and even conspiracy theories. But despite all the cameras planted, scientific experiments, and testimonies collected, the mystery remains. Is what happens at Belmez merely a clever hoax concocted by an unknown individual? Or are there lingering spirits trying desperately to convey a message we have yet to understand? The question remains open, and the decision is yours. Would you dare to visit Belmez yourself and stand above those faces, silently staring at you?